Hi, thank you for coming. I'm Kim Foster. I'm the clerk of Grace Harbor County in Washington State. I've been a member of NACOM member for about a year. Today we have three speakers. We have Siva from the New Jersey Judiciary, Jack, the Chief Information Officer, and Michelle, the Clerk of Superior Court, New Jersey. I'm just going to let them jump right into it. Jack has a lot to say. So welcome.
You have this mic on? Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. So I'm Jack McCarthy. I'm the CIO of the New Jersey Judiciary. I've been in that role for just about 8 years now. A few years ago, we were down at the Gartner Symposium. Gartner is an IT research firm. They bring all the technical minds from around the world in, and they learn from them, and then they provide us the information back. We've been fortunate enough, my boss, the administrative director, Judge Glenn Grant, has been attending the conference with us for probably the last 4 or 5 years. There's about 10 to 15,000 people there, and when he started going, he was the only judge for sure. Now I think there's about 3 judges because we bring 3 judges every year. But while he was in one of the sessions, it was on chatbot, and the nice thing about having your boss really ingrained in technology when you're a technical person is you get a lot of funding, a lot of innovative ideas come out of it. The problem with bringing him to conferences like this is he sits there and he wants everything he sees. And so during one of the sessions, he's sitting next to me and he's furiously sending emails, not to me, but to Michelle. Michelle's our Superior Court clerk in New Jersey, and he's telling her, I want a chatbot. You have to get me a chatbot. I need one of these. So I happened to be looking over his shoulder as he was sending this, and I start sending an email to all of my staff saying, we're going to get this request. I want a chatbot. And most technical people then start trying to put parameters around it. They start asking a lot of questions to see exactly what we wanted. I specifically was very vague because there's a lot of different things chatbots can do, and there's a lot of different avenues we can take in. So I was very vague about it. One of the benefits I have with our Gartner contract is I can also call them and do an analyst call. In about 30 minutes, they give me the skinny on what's going on in chatbots in government. So I had a Gartner call, and I was I had kids that were getting ready to go to college or law school at the time, one of each. And one of the things they talked about was, I think it was Georgia State, had just launched the chatbot to their incoming students so that they would be able to communicate and ask questions like, do I have AC in my room? What's the network connectivity like in the room? And as they did that and they started launching this and letting incoming students know about this, their phone calls dropped 70% over that course of that summer. So kids that were calling and asking about very simple questions were getting very simple answers from this chatbot, and they were doing it in a channel that they understood. Very few people are willing to pick up the phone anymore. They want to jump online and do something. They want to hit a chatbot, just have a quick text message back and forth and get a response. And so as we were watching that and doing some things internally, I was invited to speak at one of the Gartner sessions, and during that I was with LA County, who had just launched CHIPS, I think they called it, and we learned kind of a second piece of the puzzle there, and that's first, people want to interact with us not when we're awake between 8:30 and 8:30 to 4:30. They want to do it 24/7. And so they started seeing floods of phone calls coming in at night when normally we're closed. We don't have a customer service 24/7 going on. But this enabled us to kind of start reaching out to people that would want to work with us off hours. The second thing they saw, and we saw the same thing, was the if you try to create a chatbot specifically around an area in your system, so maybe records management. You say, I want to answer just questions on records management. People are not going to ask you questions on records management. They're going to ask you what they want to ask you and expect an answer. So in LA County, as well as us, what we did was we first did it internally, and we added in about 1,000 questions to it that we thought that people wanted to know. Things like our FAQs on our websites that everybody has and stuff like that. We just try to start ingesting information, and we're going to show you how that all works as we get into it. But when we then said, okay, we've got our IT staff, some people in Michelle's office, we've answered all those questions. Let's launch it internally just to the judiciary staff. And when we did that, we saw our answer rate of about 80% drop to 20 or 30%. And the reason was people asked questions that we didn't think they were going to ask. So we worked over the next couple weeks and got that back up until it went back up to about 70 to 80%, and we launched it to the public. We did a silent launch, didn't really tell anybody we were doing it. We just put a tab on the website to try to draw some traffic and get people used to using it. And sure enough, the 10,000 judiciary employees that were asking questions, of course, didn't ask the same questions as the public were answering. And what that kind of showed us is we're really out of touch with what the public wants from us. So A, we're not doing it at hours that they want to interact with us. And B, we're probably not providing answers on our website and things like that that they want to hear. And so we were trying to fill a missing link with this. So over a course of a few months, I think back by last September, we had finally gotten ready and said, all right, we're launching it officially to the public, because we had gotten back up to about 70, 80% accuracy. How many questions we had? About 15,000? So, and the way we did that was by putting in Q&A on 15,000 questions. Now, I say that's the easy part of the process. I didn't have to do it. Michelle's staff did it. But they literally go in and ask a question, provide an answer, and it's that simple of a format. It's called Q&A Maker. I don't even know if we're still using that right now. I should probably know a little bit more about what the technology is behind it, since I'm in charge of the technology, but that's why I have Siva, although his technology is not working right now. But so what staff were doing was they were going in and answering those question and answer pairs, and the neat thing to me about the whole chat, and we'll get into it a little bit, this is not really a technical presentation. The focus of this presentation is more, how did we build this? What did we do to build it? Here's a little bit of the technology and how it works, but really, what's the governance? What are the processes that we put around things? We obviously, you need to make sure that you need to know who's typing the answers in for those questions, because if somebody types in the wrong thing, really appropriate answers can come out of it, and as a result, your organization can get really embarrassed by it. So we had to put that governance structure around it, and Michelle and her staff have done a really nice job with that. My staff came up with about half a dozen chatbots. The one that Steve and his group created is the one we're going to show now. But as we started looking at all the different channels and the different things that you can accomplish and the different ways you can interact, that's something I do a presentation on digital transformation, and what we've gone to. Originally you had the only way to interact with a computer was your mouse and keyboard, and how much of a struggle that was for some people to learn. We went from people that were just using the old mainframe keyboards to now this mouse thing, and what a struggle that was. My son is 25 now. When he was 18 months, I put him on his high chair in front of the Elmo ABC game on our computer, because I was trying to cook dinner that night. My wife's a CPA, so she was coming home late. I'm trying to cook dinner. He wanted to play the Elmo game. I couldn't sit with him and do it for that second, so I sat him in his high chair. I put the mouse in front of him, and I showed him kind of how it worked. And he struggled, but he figured it out pretty quickly and started clicking buttons on it. And then when Elmo did whatever he does and goes crazy and fireworks came off, he loved that. Well, now fast forward, my niece now is 8. So when she was about 18 months, we put an iPad in front of her. And how easy that was to interact, how she just automatically just figured out the natural gestures of it, to the point that if we had to put a magazine in front of her, she'd have tried to do the same thing in a magazine. Now, fast forward to chatbots and the ability to talk with things like Alexa, OK Google, all those devices. Yeah. Every time I do this, it kicks off. But whenever but now those interactions with that and the ability to just do things like that, to speak, and all of a sudden the device reacts. You don't need to know how to use a device. You need to know how to talk now to get the information out of the computer. Doesn't mean the other channels are going away, but what we're finding, at least in the New Jersey courts, is we need the ability to interact with how people want to interact with us, whether they're driving, walking down the street, sitting at home. All those different channels we're trying to put together, and this presentation is just an example of one of those. And I thought Siva was going to be ready, but he's not ready yet, so I'll keep talking. One of the things that we did see, again, going back to the having the interaction 24/7. This summer, we launched a credit card service. We take credit cards online to pay things like traffic tickets, and it's called NJMC Direct. If you're ever fortunate enough to get a ticket on the New Jersey Turnpike, you can pay online. It's real easy. You can use your credit card. We actually get a little bit of that money goes into an IT fund which we can spend to build things like this. But when we turned it on that morning, we had switched from one vendor to another at 6 a.m., and we were waiting for the first payments to come in. And we thought, okay, by 8:30, we'll get a couple and be able to test it out. By 6:30, so we turned it on at 6, by 6:30, we had 1,000 payments done around the state. People were just almost waiting for the system to come up because they owed their money that day, and they went on and wanted to pay it immediately. And it's just another example of showing that these things are, we need to be ready to interact with the public when they want us to be. Otherwise, they're going to go elsewhere to perform some things like civil cases and other stuff to arbitration firms. The other thing that I find a lot of value in the chatbot, and I got this from when Judge Grant was at the symposium and texted Michelle and said, I want to name the thing. I want to create an avatar around it. I wanted to give it personality and have people to be able to interact with it. And so the next time I was with Michelle in a meeting, she started referring to it as she. The Gia was a she. And I said, really? Gia's a she? And she says, yes, it is. Do you want to argue with me about it? And I said, no, I'm good. I said, I'll be fine. Not, Gia's a she. But what I saw was as she was working with her staff to teach it and so that it learned, which are two words that are generally focused at humans, but now we were doing this algorithm. We were giving it knowledge in a question and answer session. It reminded me of what I had done when I first started as an IT manager back in the mid-90s. Of when we started putting Windows 95 PCs on people's desktops, and you get a lot of resistance from maybe one of the older judiciary clerks at the time. And so we'd sneak into her office and we'd steal the pictures of her grandkids and scan them and put them as wallpaper on the picture. And that way when she turned it on, she had it became more human to her. It wasn't this scary thing, there's my grandkids, I'll learn how to interact with it. And so using that same kind of approach, we embraced this concept of this is a living thing, even though it's not. We kind of felt it was a living thing, and very quickly I learned that it wasn't going to be a male living thing, it was going to be a female living thing. How are we doing, Siva?
It's not fully ready, but we can move ahead with what we have.
All right, then go.
That's fine. Okay, well.
I've answered all my questions.
Yes.
So you can just go.
We're going to go a little bit off script here because Jack has already done his part, which was supposed to happen somewhere in the middle. But we'll get moving. I don't have everything working, but whatever is connected and working, we're going to try to show you that piece. So I had an AI algorithm that I wrote. I hope you understand what an AI is, right? Most of you have heard about it, artificial intelligence. And it kind of predicted, given that our session is going to be right after lunch and before the end of the event, I'm going to have less than 5% chance to have your attention through this session. So I tried coming up with innovative ways to grab your attention and keep you engaged in the session. Let's see how it works. So to kickstart the session, I have a 1-minute short video. I hope it's going to pump up some energy over here, and then we'll go do some more stuff after that, okay? Now the audio isn't playing through the proper channels, so I'm going to have to play it off of the computer and hope it resonates or comes off of my microphone here.
We want to be there for our users,
Can you hear?
asking them, hi, how can I help? We think that you should just be able to message a business in the same way you message a person. A person that knows you, knows about your world, and is always with you across all your devices. We think of the assistant in a very specific way. We think
Hold
of
on.
it as a conversational assistant. This conversation is a platform.
Trust me, it's playing here.
Response. And it shouldn't take your full attention like a phone call would, and you shouldn't have to install a new app. So you should be able to ask Google, what's playing tonight? And by the way, today, if you ask that question, we do return movies.
Okay. This is not my computer, so it is not playing as per the script over here. Why was this? Okay. I'm going to shut this off.
Yourself.
Can we get some help from audio video? This thing, yeah, this thing is not even. Go right into the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay. So that video was supposed to give you an introduction about how the industry is moving forward, and that information is from some of the great leaders, right? The most innovative and informative minds up there. And the message that we are getting here is they are not only reshaping the way that we communicate or the public communicates or engages with any business, but they are fundamentally rewriting the way we as humans totally communicate, right? Think about it. The emojicons, they have their own lexicon right now, and they have their own meanings. And not only that, some of the stuff that is becoming very interesting is the way the virtual assistants are engaging with us, right? A couple of years ago, if you have taken a look at it, virtual assistants were just beginning to penetrate into our lives, but today you see that they're totally pervasive. And here is a fun fact that I wanted to bring up, and I hope this is familiar to most of you. This happened a couple of weeks ago in the recent Super Bowl ad. You had this commercial, and if you look at the hashtag before Alexa, what was it like before Alexa is something that struck a chord with me. I have a little one, and this is exactly what she asks me. What was life like before Alexa? She thinks it's so easy that even a caveman could do it. All right, unfortunately, her dad is a superman according to her, but I have to do something. It is not only the Gen Ys and the Gen Zs that are growing up in this digital ecosystem who are getting used to this technology and growing with this technology. It is even the Gen Xs as well as the baby boomers who are very quickly adapting to this technology right now. So some of the facts that I want to bring up for your attention here. This is a survey that was conducted by Accenture, and this was done 3 years ago. It is 3 years old, but the numbers are pretty interesting. You can see on the top, 50% of the customers no longer care if they are interacting with humans or AI-enabled technologies, right? This was 3 years ago when these technologies were still in the nascent stage of their life. And then if you look down, 86% of them were satisfied with the experiences that virtual assistants provide. And the last point, which struck me really hard, is that customers who are older than 55, these are the baby boomers who we thought that may take a long time or might not even adapt to this technology. They have come along really, really well. So 3 years ago, they found out that 27% of the people believe that intelligent interfaces such as bots, they are something that they're ready to accept and move on. That being said, I wanted to bring up the core point. What does this mean to us as codes? Today, our customers, the constituents, it is an option. It is a preference for them to go with an alternative form of communication. But very soon, it's going to become a necessity. They're going to demand anytime, anywhere, anyway format. Anytime, I mean, they want to have 24/7 access, and they want 24/7 option to engage with the course. Say it be a simple help desk customer service type engagement, or maybe a complete online dispute resolution option, right? Anywhere. They want to be in their living room, they want to be in their family room, work wherever they want to have an access from there. And anyway, right, there are multiple ways the technology has brought upon us. We have a chat, we have virtual assistants, we have whatnot. We have different ways of engaging with the business. So they want it to happen anyway. And also they want it to happen in a language of their choice, right? We have to give them an option, whichever way they want to communicate with us. So it is time for us as court leaders to think about moving some of the court services we are offering in the court and moving them into the living room of the constituents. So how did New Jersey go about addressing this issue? Like Jack has mentioned a lot of points on how we went about kickstarting this initiative and how did we get into it. But the key point that I want to bring up, and it is very important, that having a senior leadership buy-in is critical to the entire operation. Right? We in New Jersey, I personally think that we have been very lucky with our Chief Justice Stuart Rabner and our Administrative Director, Judge Grant. They are visionaries and they embrace technology enthusiastically. So they challenge us. They empower us to go and come up with innovative ideas. So they let us go and come back with a solution. As long as it adds values to our constituents, they're open for it. Obviously, Jack, our CAO, he's not only a digital leader, but he's been a very transformational leader. And under his leadership, we have moved completely away from a document-based core case management system into a complete digital-based case management system. None of this would happen without support from business, so I have to thank Michelle, who's been leading, and she's very enthusiastic, and she even champions all of these technical solutions. So getting the top leadership approval or buy-in is very, very important before you embark on a journey which is, I wouldn't say complicated, but a complete paradigm shift in the way that we do business today. Now, New Jersey's answer to all of this, as Jack indicated, is GIA, is through GIA, right? GIA stands for Judiciary Information Agent, and GIA is an artificially intelligent, AI-powered chatbot. This is the first step that we took, but this is a step in the right direction. We are still crawling, but we are moving, so I hope we can share all of that knowledge with you, and over the next 30 minutes, probably a little bit less, talk more about our journey, the good, bad, and the ugly, and then give you some concrete points that you can take away and try to make an informed decision at your courts. And also, if you're technically into it, I sneaked in a few slides that cover some of the technology behind the scenes working. You go back, you may sound intimidating or you may sound cool to your kids too. So let's see how that goes. That being said, this is the theme for today is supposed to be more of conversation and engagement. So I would really like you all to be engaged in the session, have a conversation with us, understand how things happen, ask the questions that you want to ask. I want to start off by asking Jack, I think you skipped or you went past most of the questions. All right, so I will jump over to Michelle and ask Michelle. This is supposed to be Jack's slide, but so we are going to skip right through that. Michelle, I wanted to, as I said, you enthusiastically embrace technology, and then you have spearheaded this initiative. So what motivated your buy-in to start doing this?
Similar to what Jack had to say, I was very excited to get the stream of emails from Judge Grant, because usually when Judge Grant comes to me with a project, it usually helps with the customer service aspect of my operation. And I just kind of want to set the framework of the context of what I operate in as a clerk's office. So I have 143 staff who are responsible for our filing, our court files, our records, our foreclosure and judgment dockets, our records management, our customer support, our technical support, and our technical access. So we have a lot of customer interface and a lot of customer interactions. We estimate that we service somewhere between 750,000 and 1 million customers a year based on all of our different avenues. And so when Judge Grant reached out to me regarding the chatbot, I was very excited because we average about just under 1,500 phone calls a day. And I had anticipated that by utilizing the chatbot, at a minimum, I was going to reduce by at least 20%, but I've actually reduced, we believe, by about 33%. So it has actually helped with the reduction in call time and the reduction in staff time. And so the first thing that it did was and just kind of adding off of that, it also made information available 24/7. because we didn't have to wait for an agent. My hours are 7 to 5 p.m. in terms of the in terms of the clerk's office operations. The GIA is available 24/7, so they can access it through any page on our webpage, and now you can access it through Alexa, which we'll talk about. And so people can utilize that system. And we found overnight we were getting lots and lots and lots of questions regarding jury. And so if I could take a step back for a moment, as Jack said, Judge Grant said, I want a chatbot and I want it now. And on the back of his wall, he has a sign that says, it's not about the process, it's about the results. And so we knew we had to kind of operationalize the minute that that email came out to figure out how are we going to do this? What resources do we currently have? What are our frequently asked questions? And so I had a lot of information available to me. As the clerk, I could access the various practice divisions, their standard operating procedures, their customer support guides, their frequently asked questions. I have 2 areas of operations for the court, including records management. So we took all of our frequently asked questions and started formatting them. The next thing that we did was that we started to go to various aspects of the judiciary and its operations. So ADA accommodations, language translations, jury service, directions to the courthouses, parking in different facilities. And we started to add that. And so within, I would say under 2 weeks, we had 2,700 questions in there with only 4 staff working on it. Within 6 months, we had over 12,000 questions with 2 staff working on it. And as we did each of our phased roll-ins, or rollouts, I should say, we were able to get analytics and metrics back. So GIA has a report that's issued to me on a monthly basis that says how many questions were asked, what were the answers that were provided to those questions, and then we help to determine that accuracy rate. And so as Jack had mentioned, we started out at 37% in February. We increased to about 57% in March, and now we're about 80%. So the kind of the quality of the question and the accuracy of the response has increased as well. Last month alone, I had almost 2,500 questions that were posed. So we're averaging about, anywhere between 500 and 700 questions a week. Those are 500 or 700 questions that my call center agents don't need to answer directly. Additionally, we're looking at how do we integrate this with other systems that I have. So I have a lot of other IBM customer service products that we utilize to help manage access to the court system, electronic filing, electronic access to records, various different things, and GIA will integrate with that. Additionally, we're going to be able to add features like being able to provide responses in different languages and the ability to ask questions in different languages. And as it also allows my staff kind of to interact and to multitask in the sense that we can get in, we have them working on their other various projects, but we get these reports in and we just update the information to kind of make that AI communication link much stronger. And so for me, as I mentioned, overall, we've anticipated that it's reduced our actual phone calls by up to 33%. Okay.
One of the things that we learned early on is that what is most complex in this entire operation is preparing the data, right? Data is a new oil, and we have to ensure that we train the system with the right data, garbage in, garbage out. So Michelle, what I want to ask you is, how did you go about the process of identifying, curating the right data set that is needed to communicate the right message? What was it like to train and retrain and get the feedback loop and get it from a puppy to a PhD level for that AI algorithm here?
So the first thing that we did was we asked the call center agents to record the questions that they were being asked on the phone. And so we utilized our existing resources. I started with the call center agents. My office and all of our local courts, or what we call vicinages, have an ombudsman's office. So I reached out to the ombudsman's office and I asked them to provide me anywhere from 10 to 20 questions that they routinely see. Now, obviously, some of those questions were duplicative, but for the most part, we started to gather our information. As I previously mentioned, we looked at standard operating procedures. We looked at frequently asked questions. We looked at new judiciary judiciary initiative. So the judiciary in 2016 rolled out criminal justice reform. So we knew that that was a new initiative to the New Jersey court system. And so we started to kind of reach out to all the various stakeholders that had information about that to get commonly asked questions so that we could start to put all of that information together. One thing that we learned early on was that the artificial intelligence was very sensitive to language. So if we put in, how do I reschedule and a court date, and the person put in, I have a conflict with my court date and I can't make it. Essentially, it's the same answer that they're going to get, but the system was kind of looking for a one-to-one correlation or a verbatim correlation. So we went through and we started to look at kind of the common language of the questions we had already presented. So if it said, I'm an attorney and I need to do this, we also programmed it as, I'm a lawyer and I need to do this. I'm a counselor at law and I need to do this. I'm a counselor and I need to do this, just so that it would pick up the different variations of the information. Words like expungement, some people may say, I want to get rid of my record, I want to strike my record, I want to expunge my record, I want to, I think punge my record with some things, or purge, whatever those were, we tried to kind of make those connections. And so those are not part of our 15,000 questions. So each of the questions that we have may have 5 or 6 different subsets under them, so that it's variations of the same question that provide the same answer. And so what it did was it started to retrain and to strengthen the artificial intelligence. Once we felt comfortable with the amount of questions that we had in there, and we also felt comfortable that a success for us was that we started to get it out there, we got people using it, and we got them providing us feedback. So I wasn't concerned whether we had a 20% success rate or 100% success rate. I was more concerned about, will people use it? Do they find it it's easy to utilize? And if we have the questions wrong, we're going to get them right, because we're going to start to get the feedback. And so as Jack said, we softly rolled it out. We started out with my call center agents, and they started typing in questions and getting the answers. And then we took the reports on a daily basis and said, this question asked for this is not the right answer. We went back in and we fixed it. We then rolled it out to our local county courthouses, primarily our ombudsman's offices, because those are the ones that provide direct customer support. But we did ask anyone in the judiciary, if you're interested, please ask it a question, or ask her a question. We're going to go back and we're going to check all those logs and reports. And within a period of 2 months, we went from 37% to 67%. In terms of accuracy, we saw a 30% increase with just that kind of training and retraining and kind of breaking connections and remaking those connections.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So I have a slide up here that talks about our journey, and you are part of this journey totally with us. You spoke a lot about the good. Can you make a couple of points in terms of what was the bad, what was the ugly, and anything that we could share with the audience here today?
It was a lot of work over a relatively short period of time, but we were really looking for the results of kind of getting in as many questions as we can. And, one of the worst things I think that I ever said to my staff was, I read an article and I heard that if we got to about 10,000 questions, that really helps us in terms of, making sure that we're strengthening the artificial intelligence and that it increases our accuracy rate. And my people took that literally. So I think I had 10,000 questions within 6 weeks, but obviously the right connections weren't made in order for the artificial intelligence to be correct. But we made it fun. And so it really was a grueling 3 months, and I would say by month 6, when we were going over report after report on a daily basis, and it was disappointing sometimes to see a day where you had a 20% accuracy rate, but it was questions that we hadn't anticipated. But it was also kind of exciting to be able to go to this new area and say, let's learn about it, let's figure out what it's about, let's make the connection. If we're talking about a family placement case, we don't really have much information about resources and family services that might be available to litigants, but let's do that now. It's not just about judiciary questions, it's about, other links and resources. What might someone need or want when they're asking us for information? And so I want to say, I think for us, the hardest part was kind of not my, I think my staff wanted to see us up to 100%. And obviously it's not there. It's a work in progress. Information is changing all the time. Right after we entered all the phone numbers, we went over to a new voice over IP system. So we had to go back in and change every single phone number within the system. But those are the kind of things that you laugh now in hindsight. But, it was challenging. I mean, I can't say that staff weren't tired when they weren't, like, the questions and the amount of kind of brainstorming sessions that we had to say, are we asking this question in every possible variation or format we can think of so that it increases our accuracy?
Thank you, Michelle. Any questions for the leadership from, go ahead. Technical difficulties.
So when you mention your call center, are your clerks and your staff, you have just a call center for phone calls then? Or do they do everything?
So
I have a follow-up.
So as I mentioned, I have about 145 people, and they're broken up into teams depending on what they do. So I have my operations team, which deals with the actual dockets, and then I have my records team that deals with the records. But the good majority of my staff are my call center staff, and they answer written inquiries, which falls under my ombudsman section. And then I have a procedural part of my call center, a technical side of my call center, and a municipal part of my call center.
So how have their duties changed to reflect the new increase with your chatbot?
So the good thing about this is that the procedural side is the one that saw the 33% decrease, and they've now been cross-trained on the technical and the municipal side of things. And so I now, and to be quite honest, I have been able to cross-train all 145 to be able to deal with every area of operation. And so anyone in any of the teams, if I was to get an influx of calls in any capacity, could get on the phone and actually answer them. So right now in New Jersey, it's our attorney registration period. So we have about 91,000 attorneys who have to register and update their information and pay their annual assessment. All 145 of my staff are on the phone at least an hour a day.
And then one quick question, how much does it cost a month? How do you do that?
How much does
is the process for the chat that when you implemented and all that, how much is it a monthly fee or is it an annual contract?
So there's a couple different companies. Right now we're actually switching from Microsoft to IBM. So I'm gonna answer this in two different ways. It's incredibly cheap because it's all up in the cloud now. So what did it maybe cost us? $5,000, $10,000 for the.
That's what we had for the entire year last year.
Yeah, for the entire year. So you're not talking about an incredible amount of data when you're asking questions. I don't know if we'll have time to show a demo, maybe we will, but it literally, the screen that Michelle's staff use is question and answer. And then underneath that, you can see the pairs that have already been made. So if I wanted to do a search on she mentioned expungements. If I wanted to type in, I could search myself for expungements and see all the pairings that had been done. What Michelle and her staff do is every single time somebody asks or answers a question, it gets logged. So you actually just see that here's the question, here's the answer in a log. And then they have a governance process they go through the next day, and they look at all those things and said, was it correct? Is that the answer we would want it to give? I will say 100% of the time it gives an answer. May not always be the right answer. And in some cases, if it really has no clue what the answer is, the question it defaults to is, here's the phone number, call. And so what we're trying to do is narrow that down as much as we can. But there's a constant, I was talking before we started with somebody, and I was a really good math student. I'm an IT guy. That's kind of goes together. I was a horrific English student. I got to college. I didn't belong in college English classes. But now through this, and you can start looking at the English language and how mathematically you can create patterns that this thing recognizes and starts linking those patterns together. And just by going through that process, I can start looking at English as math, and it makes more sense to me. What she was talking about, each time they go in and answer a question slightly differently, litigant, party, whatever term we want to use, you're not doing a 1-to-1 pattern. You're doing a 1 to 500 pattern, because it's able to answer not the question that you had, but 50 other ones as well, 500 other ones as well, as it's making those links. And so as you see it really start learning and ingesting stuff, it gets better and better. And so the value that her staff put in for those first few months, now we're paying, we're having huge benefits, and it's only going to continue to grow as we get into language translation and other things. We also don't have a legal dictionary in the world. It's something that Steve has been working with some people on creating.
Jack, you're stealing all my lines.
All right, but it doesn't matter. You're not going to get to them anyway. It's what happens when we go off script. But so we're creating that. We're from the ground up. In other areas, like medical is the one that they've made a lot of advances in. You have these dictionaries that people can just plug into. This didn't create it, so we had to start it from the ground up. But as we said, there's 15,000 questions that if I handed to any one of your courts and said, go in and answer this, but with your own address or your own processes, you could very quickly get this up and running, because she's already thought of the questions for you.
And just kind of to put it into perspective in terms of staff time, I'm a very busy office, and so my staff the first 3 months could only commit somewhere between 15 and 20 hours of their 35-hour week. After that, it takes 2 people no more than 5 hours of their time to maintain what we get for the month. So we're only committing at this point 10 hours worth of staff time. I use a clerical staff person to kind of input the answers, make the corrections and the link. And then I use a court executive staff person to go in and just sign off on it, that the connections as they understood them are proper, and that the information and the language is there, so that we have a second level lookup. And so again, if the court executive is spending 2 hours of his time, that's a lot. It's mostly the clerical person, and it's really not a tax on our operation. We have a question here.
Are your call center staff unionized? And if so, did you run into any challenges in terms of automating union work?
No, because I think there's no shortage of it. And they didn't necessarily question it. I think that they just saw it as we still needed union staff to be able to enter the information. I did talk to them because I have an ongoing and continuous relationship with them, given the size of my staff. So they were aware of the chatbot. They were aware of the expansion of the call center, because at the time I had just gotten the technical piece of the call center, but I hadn't gotten the municipal piece of the call center when we started this. And so they also knew that we were going through a period of transition and expansion. And it's actually resulted in kind of, I think, more quality work, but not necessarily less work, because we had been on a trajectory that our call volume was going up by about, I would say, close to 40% annually.
One of the things that in this whole AI world, and every conference I go to, that same question or type of question comes up. It's not an automation or replacement. It's augmenting what the person can do. So they're able to, as Michelle said, do more calls in the same amount of time using this tool. You're eliminating some of the rote tasks. What these things are very good at is basic, easy, repeatable tasks. And then you can free up your staff to really assist people with the more complex things that they're coming in, family cases, adoption cases, whatever it is. But it's really more of an augmenting those factory worker from the 1800 kind of tasks, where it's just do this all day long and repeat and repeat and repeat. We're able to get that work away and start elevating those staff up. And so it's something that comes up every single session. I'm sure automation is expected to eliminate 1.8 million jobs in North America by 2022, according to one of the Gartner studies I saw. It's also expected to increase the workforce by 2.3 million. Different kind of jobs, though. We're eliminating the rote task jobs, and what we're looking for are the engineering kind of AI-driven jobs. And so it'll be interesting to see if that actually happens, if we actually do see that increase. But you're going to need, you know, if your task was those rote tasks that you do over and over and over, you should be thinking about training those people into some other task that's a little bit more complex. You want to keep going?
You
that
had
took all your time?
Question? This thing is not, can I get some help with the visuals? I'm not able to bring up my screen on the projector here. No, it's just the demo of the bot.
So to fill in for Siva's time some more, back when we started criminal justice reform January 1st, 2017, one of the concerns I had was our transcript process for appeals. So we started diving into this area because our goal, legislatively, our goal was to do a risk assessment against everybody within 48 hours of arrest. Our Chief Justice said 48 hours is a great number. I want 24 hours. We want to be doing these things. We want to have people arrested at 11 p.m., out the next day by 11 a.m. So it was really 12 hours, and then it drove it down even further. One of the problems I had with this whole process was if the judge made a ruling and we had an appeal, our transcript process allowed the transcribers 28 days to come back with the transcript, and if it was expedited, it was 8 days. So here we are putting all this technology in to get out of something within 24 hours, and yet the appellate process could take a month. That didn't make sense to me. We started talking to a couple different companies about what was possible, and they all said the same thing. We can all transcribe the written word as it's spoken, but what we can't do is say who's speaking. So if I was speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, they weren't really good at that yet, but said give it 6 months and we'll be there. It actually took about 9 months, but they were there so that you could actually have a court hearing and have the transcript being printed out on a screen, and you could see speaker 1, speaker 2 with a high degree of accuracy. What also happened in that last 2-year period, which I didn't expect and didn't see, was the transcripts being able to flip over to different languages. And so you can now take a transcript, and you've probably seen the commercials that Microsoft has about their video conference rooms. And as the spoken word is being said, it just click and flip it into any one of 200 different languages with a very high degree of accuracy. Right now, they're coming in at about 93% accurate on anything that's said. Now, the immediate pushback we get is, yeah, but it'll say things wrong like the word party. So if we're in a courtroom and somebody says the word party, fiesta always pops up when they do Spanish. That's always our interpreter's go-to one, is like, it says that. Okay, once I fix it once in the system, though, it's fixed for every single transaction for the rest of time in the judiciary. So we can get around things like that. But the other thing is these things are constantly learning. So just like I said, 3 years ago, it couldn't figure out who was speaking. Then it figured out that, and then it made a radical move into the able to flip various languages. And so those type of things that we're going to be integrating into the chatbot and showing and being able to jump and allow those access and fairness issues that we all are faced with in every courthouse, where whoever is walking into our courthouse should have the ability, depending on what language they're speaking, to at least have some kind of interaction. The chatbot is one avenue, but it's kind of all based on the same technology, where you have a voice channel coming in, it decodes it, it does its magic, and then it spits it out on the other side as something else, whether it's either a typed word or a spoken word in a different language. We have a pilot going on in Paterson, New Jersey. We have 65% of everybody that walks into the courthouse does not speak English as a first language. It's one of the most diverse places in the country. So we took a device that we ended up loading on an iPad, and staff can now go, the public can now go into and talk to an ombudsman in any one of 30 different languages and at least get that initial, this is what I'm here for, settled. I expect, we've been working with Amazon out of New York City a lot. I expect within about 6 to 9 months, we'll actually be able to hold a court event and then have it completely transcribed into a new language real time as it's going. May not mean we don't have an interpreter in there up front, but I believe we will have, they're clapping for me back there, they like that. We may not be that we don't have an interpreter sitting in the courtroom at the same time, but you can see just in a couple months this huge advantage when you think about the spoken, transcribed, interpreted word was done the same way for technology for 40 years, and now just in the last 4, we've had this huge change. So it doesn't look like they're doing too good over there. Any more questions? Okay. I'll repeat it.
So is that the chatbot that you're using for this transcriptionist or another form of technology?
It's the exact, that is just an interpreter technology, but it's the same type of, I mean, that was $100. It's through a device called Waverly Technologies. It's $100. If you liked Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy, where they used to put the Babelfish in the person's ear and it would understand, like, it's called the Babelfish by Waverly Technologies. And it's this, but it's all the same concept. It's the device is $100. We actually, you had to put something in your ear, and we realized the public wouldn't want to put something in their ear, so we loaded it on an iPad, and they can converse back and forth with that.
And can you use that, like in Ohio where we're from, I mean, we have to have an interpreter, but sometimes we can't find an interpreter for that. So then my thought was,
depending on what you're trying to accomplish. It's not ready for the courtroom yet. Our court interpreters have put a lot of guidelines and regulations around what happens in the courtroom. So I don't want to say it's ready for the courtroom, but if your choice is I can't find an interpreter to talk at this person to the window, or I can at least start talking to them, it's a huge win. And then you could also, right through a chatbot. Again, the question and answers is where you kind of get tripped up in the chatbot because we haven't gone through and looked at every single word to see if party equals fiesta or whatever the Spanish word for party is. We haven't done that work, but at least it could start the process. You can at least say, okay, you're in the right building. Let me get the person for you. Or hold on, I'll jump on a Skype call and find somebody that can work with you. It at least gets that introduction done. To me, from a customer service perspective, we should have one of these devices everywhere in the country where the customers come in to meet it, at least to bridge that first gap, because the person may not know what language, our staff will not know what language the person's speaking, but through one of these things, they can at least get that bridge broken and know, okay, I need Mandarin Chinese, or I need, we have a very large Indian population in New Jersey, Arabic population, a lot of different dialects. So we're able to use this to at least start the handshake. Are you
Jack,
ready
I'm
now?
ready to show, yeah.
Excellent, Ziva.
Very good. So I'm going to work with what I have. Unfortunately, there is a lot of technical difficulties which I wasn't prepared for. So here is a demo, and we have multiple versions of the bar that's been put up here. So we'll walk through the phases that how we went through the journey. I hope I can show you all the features that I wanted you to see. So the first one is the version 1, which is what took us about 30 days to 45 days, and it is 30 to 40% accuracy. And I'm going to have to see there as well because the monitor is here blank. So once you go in, so you could basically ask your question, and this is the most basic version, rudimentary style. Few domain areas were trained by the bot in 45 days, and it wasn't really understanding the question very well. You can start off, the GI will start off with how I can help, and you can ask any question that you would ask a customer service agent normally. How much is the filing fee? Oops, I asked something garbage, but it still picked up. The filing fee for order to show cause, it just randomly picked up something because it is not able to understand or come back and have a discussion. with me asking, okay, what filing fee are you referring to? So there is no intelligence sort of built into this. You just throw in a question, it's going to figure out what the best answer it could and come back to you with the answer. And Michelle, any other questions that you want to throw in here? The basic version. How do I reschedule? How do I reschedule a case? Is it visible, or do you want me to zoom it in? You can see it? No? Okay. Let me try. Better? Okay.
Away from the use of the court rules or references to case law or references to statutes where we could, because we obviously knew that that could be confusing and people may not understand them. But there are certain answers that we had no choice but to direct the person there because there may be some exceptions, or the court rule may have specific kind of criteria by which a person may do that. So you will see certain court rules will be referenced within it, but we did really try to keep this like we would our self-help guides, which was very simplistic, very straightforward, curtail as much of the legalese as possible, and where we had to, we would clarify what we meant when we said a particular word.
Sure. What you saw in phase one from a technology standpoint, we used Microsoft Q&A Maker. And as Jack indicated, it is a couple of clicks, hardly takes you probably a few minutes to get up and running, notwithstanding all the information that you have to then load and train the AI algorithm behind the scenes, but it's a fairly easy start for you to go. So that's how we started. And after we did that, we quickly realized that that wasn't panning out well the way we planned, so we had to break out the database behind the scenes and create domain-specific databases or domain-specific intelligence. And this is how, oops, the display is not here, but what we did is we broke out and we said, okay, well, let's expand one database into 10 databases. One is going to cover jury, one is going to cover civil, one is going to cover e-codes, and train that particular algorithm specifically on it. And then we'll throw in another gatekeeper in the front who can figure out what question is being asked and then divert the answers behind the scenes so it could be answered. Now, that's the version 2 that we went live with. And what we also did in version 2, it's actually version 4 over here, is we created a more navigation, I should say, to help the customers navigate through the questions and let them not let them ask any open-ended questions. So once they come in, we ask them what is it they really want to chat with us about, try to narrow down the topic, and then go from there. So we started giving them some options, like here, we call this as menu buttons, and then they would have options to go more, take a look at anything, and then based upon what they're interested in, they could hit that. And then we further narrow it down. We further help them navigate to the area of their specific interest. So you pick that. I'm going to just randomly pick something, registration queues, and then it pulls up the information. And you say, do you want to ask another question? So yes, I want to ask another question. So you're free to ask a question of your choice, but it has to be within that domain, right? So you're not out of that domain yet. And now if I ask, how do I it's not going to be able to answer that question because the bot is within that particular area and specialized in answering questions specific to that. You'll have to come out of it, go back to your main menu, and then start your conversation again based upon where you wanted to go. So this is the next step we took in the process of maturing from what I call as a puppy to a PhD. You have to go through the elementary, middle school, high school, graduate, and then get to the spot where you're absolutely capable of handling those issues. Now, the version that we have in production is a little further from here. The behind the scenes, Mitchell's team has been working on training and getting more accuracy. But what we have been doing from a technical team standpoint is we have been working on enhancing and adding a lot more features. One thing also we quickly realized is once you go live with a feature like this, customers are going to expect more and demand more from you. So we wanted to take it and go a step further and offer more services through the bot itself. And some of the stuff that we came up with is, number one, is the language translation services. So you have an option, which is not in production today, we are still working with that, is to be able to go and say to the bot, I want to have a conversation in Spanish. So today we are going to support English and Spanish, but hopefully behind the scenes or in the near future, we will be able to enable more languages. Any major service provider like Microsoft or IBM will be able to support all the dominant languages that you will need support with. So this is Spanish, And I honestly don't understand Spanish, so I had a question that I typed up. And what does this mean, Michelle? The Spanish one. That's the one? Okay. So you could communicate in Spanish and you're going to totally have a conversation. And this is all by a flip of a switch. We did not do any programmatic logic or anything behind the scenes. An automatic translation happens and it's pretty good. So this is something that we are currently testing, and hopefully within a matter of days or weeks, we should be live in production with this. Now, the other cool feature, or I wouldn't say cool, I would say necessary, is you have to have some kind of a human aid for a bot service. You cannot just leave your bot alone by itself. It's good for some basic Q&As and stuff like that, but once you start getting into some advanced answerings and assistance, you really want to make sure that there is some kind of a human agent behind who would be able to take over where the bot cannot do anymore and then fulfill the request, right? So we are tinkering around with one of the technologies where we are able to connect with our live customer service so they could pick up and then move from there. Something that we can demonstrate is a rudimentary solution that does it. Say, for example, oops, we say hello, and then we go into the question, something random, what the bot cannot pick up. So here is the window that a customer service agent will see, right? Now, they will be listening to the conversations as and when it comes. So they have to activate something on their side, a listener, which listens to any assistance that they need to provide. So I just activated one, and the customer service agent is now listening to this channel. And if over here, if I say this, it's going to say, I'm sorry, I cannot understand what you mean. Do you want to speak to a human? So we have an option, or the customers or the constituents will have an option to say, okay, speak to a human, select that, and then please wait for your request to be accepted. On this side, they would see an option to accept the request coming in. All they have to do is go and say accept, and now there is a direct channel communication that is opened up between both the parties. Now they could have a conversation. They would be able to see, the customer service agent would be able to see all the context of the conversation, so they know exactly where you're coming from, what your issue is, and they would be able to address it. So they could basically go and say, how can I help you? And the conversation starts. So this is one thing that we are really excited about, and we really want to integrate with our help desk software and see how that's going to enable us. The next feature, one of Jack's favorite, is this. So how good is it for you to just come and chat with a bot to get the basic information that you could probably go and get it from our website? We want to take it another level. So we wanted to connect with our case management systems. We want the attorneys to come up, or even the public in case of civil, to come up and do a lookup on their case to find what their calendar looks like and when is the next case scheduled. They wanted to interact with the case management system through the bot so they don't ever have to touch a screen. So what we did is we are hooking up with our civil system, and this is again for demo purposes. We don't have any real data. I created some fake data to demonstrate how this would work. So the attorney would authenticate with our system and would say, okay, my name is, and then my attorney ID is. So they are authenticated, and we know exactly their cases and their relevant stuff. So we are able to come back and say, what do you want to do with it? And the attorney will have an option to say, can you show me case information, or I want to see calendar information. I'm going to just pick up case information and say, give us the docket number. I'm going to say DC. And it further comes back and asks you what you really want to see in the case. Say, I want to see case information. It pulls back all the details from the case management system, and all of this is displayed, and the attorney doesn't even have to log into the system to understand what is going on. But what we thought would be further interesting is, why don't we enable this in all the other channels? We know most of our users are right now using virtual assistants, so why don't we go there and enable that? Why don't we let them choose Alexa and talk to a code system and get all the details that they want without even having to? Alexa is pretty proactive. So we want to demonstrate how that feature would work, and I'm happy to say that we just went live with this a couple of days ago. So if you ever want to try a New Jersey bot, you can go to Alexa in your own thing, and then you can install a skill. We called it, as we named it, NJGIA, you could download that skill, set it up in Alexa, and then you can start communicating with our bot through Alexa itself. And I liked it, so hopefully you will like it too. Michelle, you want to demonstrate?
So I'm just opening my Alexa app. Alexa, open NJGIA.
Hi, I'm Gia. I can help answer questions on the New Jersey judiciary.
How do I reschedule my court case?
Sorry. Yes.
Court Rule 7 to 8 to 3 governs adjournments. If you know before your court date that you will need more time to prepare your case or to speak with an attorney, you can ask the court to give you a later court date. Submit your request to the court as early as possible. Be sure to call and follow up on an adjournment request before your trial date. If you do not receive a phone call or written notification from the court that your matter has been adjourned, you should attend court on your original date. It is possible that you will still have to appear on the court date and make the request in person even if you have made a request before your court date. For additional help with your question, please call the Superior Court Clerk's Office Call Center at 609-421-6100. I hope that helped. You may ask another question or say exit to leave.
What is the telephone number of the Passaic County Civil Division?
The main contact number of the Passaic Vicinage Civil Division is 973-247-8176. I hope that helped. You may ask another question or say exit to leave.
No?
So the Alexa and the other virtual assistants are all using the same back end as
I
Michelle's
have to go
staff typed in. Again, it's just different channels. We had a slide that we usually show, which just shows all these different channels you can come into, with the hard work being build the database in the back end, and then you can just technically integrate to that. And whether the questions come in through a chat message, whether they come in through text, whether they come in through voice. Are you going to show that now?
Well, I don't have a lot of time left, so I'm just going to...
All right, so you can go through it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So what we thought is because this being a tech track, we wanted to introduce some of the behind the scenes working of how NLP works, and maybe you can go back and make some informed decisions on it. This is the 50,000 foot of what happens behind the scenes under any bot. A bot has two major components. One is the brains, in a very simple language. One is the brain, the other one is the body. And the brain is what I have in the middle. It is the natural language processing, which is where the machine is now learning to speak a human language. Gone are the days where we learned the machine language. Now it's the other way around. And then behind the scenes is your knowledge base, the database that we spoke about, which has all your code data, and then other data repositories or case management systems that it could interact with. On the front, you see the different channels that a user can communicate. We demonstrated communicating through Alexa. You could come in through your text in your telephone. You could do Skype. You could do Slack. You could do Facebook Messenger, whatever channel you choose to, which is what we think the customers are going to demand in the very near future. Everything is channeled and funneled into the core natural language processing engine. No matter which vendor you go with, they all have some sort of mature natural language processing engine behind the scenes that learns to speak your language, what we call as a legalese. And I want to take a couple of slides and show how that would work. At a very high level, a conversation is broken down into key pieces. This is just pure, simple English grammar. The way machine breaks it down is it takes the utterance, which is the message the user puts it in, and then it takes or tries to analyze and find the user intention. Over here, in this example, find me an Italian restaurant in New York City. The user intends to find a restaurant. So the intention over here is a find, and then the entity or the item that the user is interested in is an Italian restaurant, and location is New York City. So this information is grabbed from every single message that the user sends in. And what the AI engine behind the scenes try to do is remember all of that information. In this case, the location would be remembered as New York City. So if you go back and ask a follow-up question, how's the weather there tomorrow? The AI should be able to pick up and say, okay, this is the context-based information is New York City, so I have to check on the weather in New York City, come back and respond with the answer. Moving on, this is what happens within the AI algorithm. This is a lot of slicing and dicing and polishing of the data before it is fed into the algorithm. This is where the heavy lifting happens, and this is the most difficult part that you will encounter when you're doing this journey. Here I have some samples of what happens. The same text is taken, broken down into tokens. The unnecessary words are removed out of that, and then a lot of stemming happens, lemmatization, going to the root words to understand what they mean, and then POS tagging, which is part of speech, verb, adverb, noun, it tags all of that, and then it normalizes, which is very, very important given all the LOLs and ROFLs that we put in the text. It needs to understand what we mean. So all of that is done behind the scenes. Now, once all of this is done, it is fed into an algorithm, and out comes the dictionary that Jack was referring to, and what we call that as a vector. And that is pretty much the brains that you have to go after. Now, Jack spoke about English and mathematics, so that's why I said that you stole my line, but I was going to talk about it. So this is how behind the scenes it draws the vector, which derives relationships between entities and associations and stuff like that. If you look at the left example, you can see dog is very closely associated with barking, while dog and cat, a cat is moved a little bit away from the bark, a car is directly associated with a park. So this is how the machine tries to make sense of the context of the word that you mean. And the word park might also be in a completely different context, which means the play park, and that would have no association with this vector. An example that you can take here, just a man, woman, king, queen, is there is a relationship between a man and a woman, that is a gender relationship, while there is a relationship between a man and a king, which is a title, a royal relationship over there. So the vector would behind the scenes work in a way you take a king and remove the man out of it, which leaves only with the royalty, and then you put woman on that vector. Now all you get is a queen. So it's a parallelogram relationship, mathematically defined model, but this is what we need to do for the legal industry, and that's what Jack is referring to. It is not a mature space out there. So you will have to work with a vendor that is putting in a lot of time into this or building this dictionary so you could just capitalize on that investment. So moving on, looking ahead, the stuff that Jack spoke about, we are transitioning from the Microsoft technology to IBM technology. And one of the main reasons why we are doing that is we are investing in Watson, not only because we wanted Watson to help with our NLP technology, but we wanted Watson to speak legalese to us, to be able to interpret our documents and help us with the case management work, document processing, online dispute resolution. So we wanted to use one AI brains behind the scenes to work with all our AI needs. So we chose IBM, and we also figured that IBM's Watson Assistant had a little bit more capabilities for building all the dialogues and remembering context and stuff like that. Most of it was out of the box, and their language translation was also on par with Microsoft. Don't get me wrong, even Microsoft is a great solution. Amazon has a wonderful competing solution as well, so you could pick any one of that based upon what you have handily available, but we chose to go with IBM. This was me when we made the first bot. It was a really wonderful feeling to have, but I wanted to give you all that word of caution that you heard. It is a very, very easy start. There is very low barrier for you to enter, but the hard work is with the way you train your AI algorithm. So you have to be very careful. You have to curate the data. You have to have a lot of patience, and you have to throw in resources to get your, or handhold your bot and get it all the way through. Some key considerations, some of the questions that I thought might be helpful for you that you would be asking when you're trying to venture this journey. First is, do you want to build one or buy one? We tried both, just buy one. A lot easier because everything is out of the box. What kind of functionality do you need? Do you just need simple FAQs, start small, and then you gradually grow, exactly how we did it? Business fulfillment, do you want a full virtual assistant model to do a lot of things? Do you want it as conversational or just once and done with it? Do you want to have voice-enabled, multilingual, human handover, all the stuff that I demonstrated? Do you need all of that? It's going to take you time to get all of that built in. One of the most challenging stuff that we are trying to solve is the human handoff, so it is not easy. Technical considerations, do you want an on-prem solution or cloud? We figured cloud was, as Jack said, easier, cheaper, quick start, and we were able to go with it. Security, right now all that we are exposing is public information, so we are not worried about confidentiality and privacy, so we are good over there. Keep an eye out for that as well. And what kind of technical skill set do you need? Well, you can hire me if you want, but other than that, you can find some skill set out there, but we have been working with Microsoft. I didn't need to join anyone, Jack. So Microsoft and IBM, they have some experts who would be able to come handhold you, get you started with the first few installs and then get going, and then probably you can train your staff and go from there. You don't need a lot of technical skills to do all of this unless you decide to venture deep into it. Governance and best practice, something that you have to put around it. Final thoughts, define clear objectives and scope for your bot. Data curation and training is where the heavy lifting is. I can't stress this point again and again. That's a very difficult thing to do. Stick with one AI vendor. We committed to IBM at this point, so we're going to grow with IBM over there. Pay attention to the bot personality. We figured out humans really like to speak with a bot that has a personality. So choose what personality your bot needs to have. Keep it conversational, and plan on ongoing training and model maintenance. It is a lot of work to keep this up. And that's about it. Well, whatever worked, I was able to share with you. I'm sorry it didn't go as planned. I had a lot more videos and stuff for you to engage you. I hope you had some information. Any further questions for us? Nope, good. Thank you all.